Hi, I'm Pat Dubrava, and I'm reading my translation of a short story, almost a flash fiction, by the Mexican author Agustín Cadena. The translation was published in Anomaly, a journal of literature and the arts. The story is set in a Mexican town small enough to not have services for a special needs child, such as the narrator's friend, and features the kind of mom and pop store that we used to have here. El alfabeto mágico. Empecé a escribir creativamente cuando me aprendí el abecedario y mi mamá me regaló la libreta Scribe más bonita de la papelería. Pero empecé a escribir en serio, tratando de hilar una secuencia con otra y de llevarlas a un desenlace cuando tenía 10 años. And then I will read my translation. The Magic Alphabet. I began to write creatively when I learned the alphabet, and my mom gave me the most beautiful scribe notebook in the stationery store. But I really began to write, trying to weave one sequence into another and bring them to a conclusion when I was 10 years old. That happened thanks to my neighbor Eugenia, who was the same age as I was. We had a small grocery store, and I spent hours there every day, did my homework there, and she came to visit me there. A wooden bench sat beside the entrance. When Eugenia arrived, I came out from behind the counter, and the two of us sat on the bench to tell stories. Well, actually, it seems I was the one who told them. It was like this. Eugenia didn't go to school. They didn't admit her because she was sick, they said. She didn't learn like the rest of the children. She didn't remember, didn't make generalizations. But the few days that she had been able to go to classes were enough to implant in her an enthusiasm for notebooks and pencils and for those magic arts by virtue of which drawing lines on a sheet of paper was making word pictures. So said Eugenia, and as of today, I still have not found a better definition of what writing is. And so Eugenia began a passionate hobby. She took a grid-lined notebook and set herself to paint an X on each little square. She began at the first page and didn't stop until she'd filled the notebook with X's. This might take her an afternoon or an entire week, depending on her desire to write. It didn't matter. Her parents bought her notebooks by the dozens, and they became the only gift she asked for. When she finished drawing the X in the last square on the last page of her notebook, she came running to our store. She brought me her notebook so I could read her the story that she'd written. I already knew what I was going to find, but I read those hundreds of X's as if they were sensible, connected sentences, and a real story began to take shape. I was inventing it, or that's what I thought at the time. Now I think maybe I invented nothing, and those stories were really there, written in an alphabet of a single letter that I somehow had the gift of deciphering. Eugenia watched me enraptured while she heard me read her own story. She never took the notebooks back. She left them all there with me so I could keep them safe. My papa had put a shelf in the back of the store that already contained dozens of volumes of my friend's works. And she, who knows how, knew one from the other. When she liked one of the stories a lot, she asked me to read it to her again. And from among all those volumes that to my parents and I looked the same, she took out one, the story of the man with the head of a horse, or of the pirates in love, or of the boy that witch had saved from drowning. And me, I waited until she left, and then set to writing from memory what I had just finished reading to her. I didn't do it with all the stories, only those that I liked, and really, they were very few. But in doing so, I began to cultivate the craft of telling stories. One day, Eugenia's parents decided to move to Mexico City, where it seemed she could go to a special school. They took her from me. They took Eugenia away from me. I never heard any more about her. I saved her notebooks until an employee's carelessness caused a fire in the store. Paper was the first to burn. Now, when the condition writers call writer's block threatens me, I get a grid-lined notebook and start filling the little squares with X's. I hear Eugenia's voice telling me that they are word pictures. And my story, that was jammed, flows again.